I knew trouble the moment I swung open my truck door and smelled fresh-cut grass drifting from the HOA side of the street. Problem hit before the dust even settled. A woman in a teal blazer stood in the middle of my gravel drive, pointing at my father's old cedar posts like it was a crime scene, citing that bright doesn't belong here, she said. Fix it or face consequences. It took me 3 seconds to realize she wasn't joking. And 5 seconds to understand she wasn't after paint. She was after control, internal thought. Dad always told me some folks don't want peace, they want ownership of your spine. The promise came quietly in my chest. She thinks I'll fold. She has no idea who she's dealing with. I had just moved into the place. My father left me an old yellow farmhouse sitting a few feet outside the Ridgeview HOA boundary. Not miles. Not blocks. Just far enough that their rules didn't reach my porch. Dad's flag still hung from the front pole, faded from years of lake wind. His old steel coffee mug sat on the rail. I set my moving box next to it, took in the pine smell, the crunch of gravel under my boots, the way the sun slid over the barn roof out back. That moment of peace lasted maybe 15 seconds. Her heels clicked on the gravel like little warnings. She introduced herself as Marla Denton, Ridgeview HOA president. Her smile looked friendly until you stared at her eyes. They twitched fast, like they were scanning for weaknesses. You're visible from our main drive, she said. So we expect cooperation. I'm not in your HOA, I replied. Her jaw tightened. People like Marla don't argue when they feel threatened, they calculate internal thought. She looked at my house the way a hawk studies a field mouse. She left without another word, but not before snapping photos of my porch, siding, mailbox, and even the old bench my father built. The breeze shifted, carrying lake water smell from behind the trees. Something told me the wind was about to bring more than rain. Within 3 days, envelopes started showing up. No return address. Typed cold. Your exterior tone disrupts community harmony. Immediate aesthetic corrections required. Failure to comply may result in legal response. I wasn't even part of their HOA. I tossed the letters on Dad's cedar table, sipped from his old mug, and tried to focus on my writing work. But every few minutes, I'd hear footsteps on gravel or notice a car slowing near my property line, and every time, it was her. Marla walked the street with a clipboard, snapping pictures like she was documenting a crime scene. Sometimes she stood still, staring at the barn. Sometimes she measured the fence Dad built with a tape measure. The sound of that tape snapping back haunted my sleep. Internal. If a person studies your life harder than you do, they're not a neighbor, they're preparing an attack. One evening, my neighbor Thomas, a retired truck mechanic, shuffled over carrying a plate of cornbread. "Son," he whispered, glancing toward the HOA side, "you're outside their map." But that woman, she acts like boundary lines or suggestions. He listed the stories in a nervous tone. She'll once find a couple because their flowers were the wrong vibe. She forced an elderly man to repaint his shed because the shade looked too cheerful. She'll find a widowed schoolteacher $800 because her wind chimes were audible during quiet hours. Ridgeview looked quiet, but it wasn't peace, just fear wearing pretty landscaping. Thomas leaned in. "Watch your back. She doesn't lose." The screen door behind me creaked as a breeze rolled in off the lake. That sound felt like Dad telling me, "Don't wait. Prepare." The first call came at 1:12 a.m., heavy breathing. A woman's voice disguised. "Outsiders don't last here. Click that next night. Same time. You have a kid visiting on weekends, don't you?" Accidents happen. Her mistake was assuming fear would make me paint my house beige. Instead, I bought 8 security cameras, wired the barn, and added floodlights across the yard. The installer asked if I was expecting a storm. I was. On a foggy morning, as birds started warming their voices, I found a message spray painted across my porch boards. Go back where you came from, else my 10-year-old nephew who stays with me some weekends stood behind me, holding his cereal bowl tight. Uncle, is someone after us? I swallowed hard. You're safe. I promise. But I didn't believe it yet. I called the sheriff. He shrugged it off as probably teenagers. Marla appeared exactly 1 hour later, hands folded, expression dripping with fake concern. Terrible thing, she said. Though sometimes trouble follows those who refuse community values. Her eyes paused on Dad's flag. That was the moment my anger turned into something sharper resolve. I started documenting. Every letter, every phone call, every photo she took. Every time she slowed her car near my driveway, I kept timestamps, weather notes, and camera angles, internal thought. If she wanted a paper war, she picked the wrong man. I grew up solving problems with my father's old tools and stubbornness thicker than oak. Soon, the real allies showed up. Colette, an ex-HOA board member, knocked on my door late at night with a shoebox of documents. She whispered. She rigged elections. She faked maintenance budgets. She finds people who speak against her. And she'll ruin you if you don't stop her. Inside the box were printed emails, altered budgets, and signatures that didn't match. I wasn't in a neighbor feud anymore. I was in a war with a crooked system. A week later, I received a certified letter, HOA versus me claim. $90,000 in aesthetic damages, they claimed. My siding emotionally distressed the neighborhood. My LaRue Marisa, a calm strategist with fire in her eyes, laughed when she saw it. They don't have jurisdiction, she said. This is intimidation, and I'm going to bury them. She filed motions, contacted county survey offices, and gathered every boundary map going back 12 years. Each one showed the same thing. My house wasn't just outside their control. It was never meant to be included. The day Marissa told me we were countersuing, I felt something unclench inside me. Not victory. Just the first breath of it. But Marla wasn't done. 2 nights later, someone threw a rock through my window with a note. Drop the case or drop DAD. Then came the gasoline incident. Security footage caught a figure creeping near my barn, splashing something near the siding. Before they could strike a match, my floodlights burst on. They ran. The sheriff's deputies reviewed the footage. The gait, the height, the wristwatch catching the light, it matched someone tied to Marla's inner circle. That was the spark. After that, the community started whispering. People who were once silent started sliding messages under my door. Thank you for fighting. She'll find us for fence height. She threatened my husband. She made us repaint twice. Fear was cracking. 3 months later, the courtroom smelled like polished wood and truth waiting to be spoken. Marla arrived dressed like she was attending a charity gala, not a hearing. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and cold. Her attorneys argued aesthetics, community cohesion, visual standards. My lawyer projected the boundary map on a giant screen. You can't enforce rules outside your land, she said. And this HOA president knew that. Then she dropped the real bomb. She presented the shoebox of evidence. 1 page at a time, fraudulent fines, altered budgets, emails discussing pressure tactics, photos of my property. Taken at 2 a.m., the judge's tone changed. And when the security footage of the gasoline incident played, the courtroom shifted from civil dispute to criminal implications. The judge dismissed every HOA claim and ordered a full financial audit. 3 weeks later, charges landed like hammer blows: fraud, extortion, harassment, tampering with records. Conspiracy to intimidate a resident. Marla's empire collapsed in a single morning. She was let out in handcuffs, eyes wide like she finally understood the line she crossed. 6 months later, my porch was rebuilt stronger, with new cedar boards that smelled like old forest rain. Insurance covered the damage. Restitution covered the upgrades. Miles ran across the yard, chasing fireflies. Thomas grilled burgers in his driveway. Neighbors waved instead of hiding. The HOA dissolved. A new voluntary group formed with clear rules, rotating leadership, and no tyrants. I repainted the house the same yellow brighter. This time, Dad would have smiled at that stubborn shade, internal thought. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's a steady sunrise after a long night. I learned something standing on that porch. A bully doesn't need a badge to feel powerful, and a homeowner doesn't need a weapon to fight back. Just truth, patience, and a community willing to stand again. Freedom isn't beige, it's the color you choose, even when someone tries to scare you out of it. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more real homeowner dramas where ordinary folks stand their ground and justice wins in the end.